Hey guys, I'm trying to go live on Facebook right now too. Am I? Wait, fuck, am I? Okay, hold on. Hey, I think I'm live on both Facebook and YouTube. All right, pretty cool. Two birds, one stone. Um, so the point of tonight's video, what is it? Um, oh wait, damn it! I almost forgot my like. Okay, but let's rewind. You know what I would do if I had $1 million? Two video streams at the same time. Get it? Office Space, guys. That hilarious comedy from the early 2000s by Mike Judge. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Anyway, let's move on. All right. Tonight's video is going to be about video games and media, and does media cause violence? Because up until gatherings were banned, in case you never really turned the news very much, mass shootings were a problem and mass violence was a problem. And because of that issue, the discussion about like media's effect on people and violent media's effect on people kind of came to the forefront again. And I remember like a lot of my friends at the time sharing this meme that was showed like an arcade or like an arcade game, and it said like it was invented in 1965, and that was the day violence was invented. You know, and a lot of my friends, and that's just one example, and a lot of people pointing out how ludicrous they thought the idea was that video games cause violence. And I understand that line of thinking because that ultimately could lead to censorship. So, and there's a lot of like kind of authoritarian underlyings with saying that. So I get being against it um, on like on a surface level, and I understand where you're coming from if you think that it is, or yeah, I understand if you think that the idea that video games cause violence is kind of ludicrous, but my thing is that that's actually kind of like a misunderstanding of what the argument is. And to kind of preface this a little bit, I do have some like background in this a little bit. Like I was not to brag, but I studied communications, mass communications, and I do have a college degree in that area. And I was a very no, but seriously, I was a very poor student, got bad grades, so my opinion doesn't matter much. But this is something that we talked about, and the one thing I simply want to say is that it's not a settled debate. And in fact, it's very much ongoing, like the effect that media has on people. So to say that video games don't cause violence, in a sense, is ignorant to. Okay, and I already said that. Like, it is ignorant to what the argument is. And what I mean when I say that is that no one actually argues that video games cause violence or violent media causes violence. It's that it causes people who already have violent tendencies to feel more comfortable with the idea of committing the violent fantasies that they have in their head. So it's not like little Johnny's a normal kid. Little Johnny watches CSI, or little Johnny watches Criminal Minds, and little Johnny decides to go kill somebody. It's more like little Johnny has violent thoughts. Little Johnny gets beat by his dad. Little Johnny watches Criminal Minds all the time, watches people killing other people. Little Johnny becomes more comfortable with that idea, and one day little Johnny stabs his dad. That's more of the argument. So it's not saying that like video games causes the violence. It's that it causes people who are violent to be more comfortable with the idea of doing it by watching someone else do it over and over again. And I think when people kind of like shut off the idea that video games can make people more violent, like to me that seems a little bit naive, because what is the point of media and the point of art if not to affect people emotionally? Like, you know, you watch comedies if you want to laugh, if you want to feel humor. You know, you watch romances and sexy movies if you want to get turned on, or you want to feel like, you know, you're falling in love with the characters. You know, and I think it's not a far leap to say that you kind of like are people oftentimes use violent movies and violent media as a scapegoat, to kind of deal with some of the stress and the anger and things that they may be dealing with. And just like a little snippet from like my own life, like I love movies. Anybody who knows me, that's probably like one of my defining characteristics. Like I used to love horror movies, and I like used to love like Tarantino movies and a lot of like hyper violent movies. And I also used to be sort of like an angry dude, and that's just sort of my natural bend. Like I'm pretty high energy. I'm pretty like, like I can really get there. It's one of my weak points. And I got to a point where like I remember very clearly. I was watching a movie called The Nightingale, and it's a very well done movie. I'm not de-recommending it, but there's a scene where something terrible happens. In fact, because I don't want to give it away if you haven't seen it, I hate that shit. No spoilers, but something really terrible happens, and like it just kind of like on an intuitive level struck me that watching this wasn't something um that was making me a better person. And I decided to cut back on violent media, violent movies, horror movies, slashers, all that stuff. And I really did notice, and this wasn't the only reason, but I did notice like a decrease in my anger. Like I noticed a decrease in thinking badly about people, and like I became like a more happy person in a sense. And just to give you an idea, like, and I started watching like a lot more sitcoms, you know, um, and like for instance, like I'm watching this show called Kim's Convenience right now, and it's a really good show. It's very underrated. If you like comedies, please check it out. But I'm watching this show called Kim's Convenience, and there was this episode where, like a father and son bond over playing soccer, and to me, like that was such a better investment of my time than watching an episode of Criminal Minds where some lady gets lured into a car with a serial killer and gets stabbed to death. And I want to make like two final points on this. One, back in the day, like back in the 50s, we had something called like the Hays Code, I think is what it was called. That might have been the one for comic books, but there was a similar one for movies where it was basically mitigated that certain things weren't allowed to be shown, like the good guy always had to win, basically like a lot more restrictions and censorship on movies, and making sure that they had a positive message in the end. And I understand, obviously, if you want to say that that's like anti-art, or anti-artistic expression. But when I look at the movies of like Billy Wilder or Alfred Hitchcock or any of the old film noirs, I like the idea that they hint at the violence more so than show the violence. Like I remember one Hitchcock movie I saw, and I don't remember the name of it. I believe it was Hitchcock, but it just ends with this guy, like he's a CIA agent, and he's about to get tortured, and the door shuts, and it doesn't show what happens behind the door, And obviously, if it were today's world, it would just show the guy get tortured. But I think as like a creator and as like for your audience, it's almost more terrifying for the audience member to imagine what's behind the door. It kind of like it does more for the audience member's imagination, and also, and I forgot what my other final point was, but I've been going on for almost 9 minutes now, so I'm just gonna shut the fuck up. Hey, and if you're watching, thank you. Yo, is my boy Tom watching right now? Tom, is that you? Is that you watching, bro? Hey, if you see this video, hey, thank you so much for all your encouragement so far. Obviously, like I'm a nobody and I need that kind of little pump up. And it's really kind of you to say some of the things you've said. Thank you.